aware that I'm in a re-emerging bicycle culture, so I have a disclaimer at the beginning of my talk. I'm going to mention bicycles a lot in the course of this talk, but I am not a cyclist. I am just a guy who happens to use bicycles to get around. Today in Copenhagen, there's about over 400,000 people in Greater Copenhagen using bicycles for transport. That's more than the entire United States of America. And the 99% of them do not regard themselves as cyclists either. We're just people who use bikes because it makes sense, it's quick, and it's convenient. So that's really the baseline for what I want to say today. I like bikes. I'm not a bike geek. I don't know how to fix them, but I like them, and I believe in them in our cities. But I really love streets. I find streets absolutely fascinating. And in the 7,000 years since cities first were formed, streets were really the most democratic spaces in the history of Homo sapiens. Nothing beat the streets for democracy. Everything we did happened in the streets. We flirted, we gossiped, we met our partners, we transported ourselves, our children played in the street, we bought and sold our goods. They were extensions of our homes, of our living rooms. Two things happened to change that 7,000-year-old perception of what streets were. And the first thing was the rapid urbanization in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, all these people moving to cities in massive numbers. And the invention of the automobile really was a game changer. Engineers were the urban heroes of the day, solving all these problems that these new cities, growing cities were throwing at them. And almost out of desperation, they were handed the job of solving the traffic safety problem because nobody else could. And they were the people who were solving things at that time. But what happened was that the perception of streets changed almost overnight. They became regarded as public utilities, like sewers, roads, electricity, puzzles to be solved with mathematical equations. That was a massive shift in our perception of streets. The other thing that happened was that the automobile industry started to wake up and smell the coffee. They had a problem. This is something they call the anti-automobile age, when the automobile appeared on our streets. Cars were despised. Motorists were, they could be lynched out of their cars for killing a pedestrian or running over a kid. And they realized that they needed to employ tactics, which they still excel at today: marketing, spin, and even good old-fashioned ridicule, to start changing people's perceptions of the streets, because they believed that streets should be there for their new, shiny automobiles. The word in America they have is jaywalking. This is when you cross the street in the middle of the block. Thank God it doesn't really exist in any European language, I can tell you. But this is a very important word because the automobile industry actually kind of invented it. The word jay existed. It was a sort of a slang for a country bumpkin, somebody from who didn't really know the ways of the big cool city, didn't know how to get around and whatnot, sort of a redneck and whatnot. So the automobile industry started calling people who crossed the street in the middle of the block for jaywalkers. They had Boy Scouts handing out flyers to these people, chastising them for their behavior. A 7,000-year-old habit, and people all of a sudden were being chastised. Anybody who said, "Oh, these cars, this is no future in this," they were labeled as old-fashioned. Seriously, you're standing in the way of progress. We live in cities. We want to be cool. We want to have the newest smartphone. We want to, be down with all the cool things that are happening in cities. So this was a very effective technique that they used, and it really took 2 decades to transform the perception of streets. Pretty soon, pedestrians were herded up to crosswalks to use these newly designed things called crosswalks, up to the corners to use these crosswalks. Children were shepherded into these newly invented things called playgrounds, these little zoological gardens into which we throw our children while we check Facebook. Like this. These were really an invention of the automobile industry. They had this one last bastion, and that was the angry mothers of the cities. And this was a major problem. And I know angry mothers, and I can assure you they have power when they want it. And they were just tired of their kids getting killed all the time, and you might understand that. And they were the last bastion, so they invented the playground. We need something for these kids. And if we can put them in there, the mothers will be happy, and they were. And finally, the streets were clear of these squishy, irritating obstacles, and the stage was set for the greatest paradigm shift, really, in the history of our cities. And we're still paying the price for that. I'm an optimist. I can see that we are approaching another paradigm shift perhaps back to the future, back to things that we knew and that might work again. This is one of my favorite quotes. The fact is that automobiles no longer have a place in the big cities of our times. I wish that was my quote, but it's a quote from a mayor of a city. And it's not the mayor of some unpronounceable Danish town or Dutch town, but it's actually the mayor of Paris for 12 years, Bertrand Delanoë. And he was a man who really saw that his legacy after his term, his 3 terms in Paris was Paris should just be nicer. It should just be a nicer place to live. Enough of this, traffic hell. Let's calm the streets. 55% of Paris is going to be a 20-mile-an-hour zone in a few years. They have the massive Vélib bike share system, 20,000 bikes, infrastructure for bikes. He said, this is the kind of Paris I want to leave behind. French politicians, they like to build big monuments to themselves. This guy went, nah, let's just make it nice. This is a sign that things are changing. When people like that say things like that, the mayor of New York has said similar things. Mayors all over the world, in Vancouver, in Chicago, in Rio de Janeiro, Buenos Aires, all over the place. This is a sign that we're approaching a different paradigm shift. Regarding transport and streets in cities, for really about 70 years, there's only been one question asked of the engineering department. How many cars can we fit down this street? That's really been the singular question. Even in cities with public transport, how many cars? All of the work and hours put into trying to figure out how to maximize flow and capacity, reduce congestion for 70 years, is that one single question. The question for modern cities now in the 21st century has changed with this very clearly illustrated Photoshop that I did. This model at the bottom, it has 5 times the capacity for transporting people down streets. This is the new question. How many people can we move down streets? European cities are just putting back in their tramways now after having removed them a few decades ago. Cycle tracks for bicycles. There's still cars on these streets. Cars will never completely disappear. But this is the question that we need to ask if we're going to solve the congestion problems of our urbanizing cities once again. At the moment, however, it feels like we are all just characters against our will in the film The Matrix, living in this little reality here, but they're actually being controlled by some other alternative reality higher up or something like that. I feel like a character sometimes in The Matrix. We live in cities, when you look at it, controlled by mathematical equations, computer programs down in the engineering department. Everything's run like mathematical models, and we're just expected to go to work and, sort of just suck it up and accept this reality. Not even aware, many people, that it exists, right? Engineering is super important in cities. My God, we need it for sewers, electricity, and all the different things, public transport, trains, and everything, but it's really a sucky way to make human streets. This is the most simple guide, the short history of traffic engineering that you'll ever see. For 7,000 years, we were incredibly rational. We had straight A to B lines for the transport forms that made sense, the intelligent transport forms. 1950s, since then, it kind of all screwed up. The cars have been given the straight line, and everybody at the expense of everybody else trying to wander around a city. How do I get across this street? How do I ride a bike? Oh, the bike lane ended. Oh, what do I do? Cars are just rolling. So this is really the shortest history of traffic engineering you'll ever see. This is the shortest traffic guide to livable cities, traffic planning for livable cities that you'll ever see. You prioritize the transport forms that make sense, the intelligent, cost-efficient transport forms, and you make driving a car basically a pain in the ass. All the campaigns in the world for let's ride a bike, it's green, it's healthy, it's saving the planet, walk more in your neighborhood, and all these things are things that people should do. Use a bike to get to work, take public transport. All the campaigns in the world are a complete waste of money unless we do this thing right here. We know from many decades of experience that the motorists are the last people to change their mode of transport. Poor bastards, it's not really their fault. That's what they grew up with. But they still are the last people to change. Everybody else is intermodal. My tire's flat in the morning. Oh, shit, I'm going to take the metro to work, right? I'll hop on a bus. We interchange very easily. Motorists are going, nope. I'm not moving. Nope. Their car, they get a flat tire. I'm taking the day off work. I simply can't come to work today. I have a flat tire, right? Everybody else will go, I'm taking the bus, dude. It's not that hard. It really is the challenge. You make driving a pain, difficult, more expensive, more complicated. And things that are happening in cities around the world. Then you start to see a behavior change in motorists. I call this A to Bism. If you make the bicycle the fastest way from A to B, the strangest people will be seen on bicycles. All we want as Homo sapiens is a fast A to B, to the cafe, to meet that girl that we just met the other day, to have a drink with her, going home to our families, going to work if we're the kind of people who like our jobs, who actually want to go to work, wherever you want to go. If you made it the pogo stick, A to Bism, people would take the pogo stick. But this is really a very, very simple way. You want people to do one thing, you make it the fastest way. This is why people ride bicycles in Danish and Dutch cities. It's the quickest way from A to B. And we know this. We've asked them for about 30 years in surveys. Why do you ride your bicycle? It's fast and quick, That's why they do it. That's all Homo sapiens want anthropology is very important. With my company, we work with planning, we work with engineers on projects, but we really focus primarily on design and direct human observation. It doesn't look like it, but this is the world's busiest bicycle street in Copenhagen, and this is a spot where the city noticed that just a couple hundred citizens every day were cutting across a sidewalk to get to a parallel street. The rush hour for bicycles is intense in Copenhagen. You've never seen anything like it, and a lot of people were taking a shortcut. The city said, okay, to their credit, the city of Copenhagen said, right, okay, let's figure out why. Let's not just hand out tickets to them every day for riding on a sidewalk, which is illegal. There must be a reason, and this is a new thing. This is a new mobility pattern that came out of nowhere. So they watched, they observed, they stalked people, they sort of followed people. They had like interns sort of following random people to see where the hell they were going. Sometimes even talking to them, where are you going? But it's more fun to sort of follow them. They discovered, okay, we have this whole new urban development south of the city, Ørestad it's called, and there's the university, Danish broadcasting, all of these places. People were getting out of the rush hour because it was too busy. And also because they could skirt around the city center and find a new route to this new neighborhood. And the city went, there you go, okay. So what happened was that they put in a temporary cycle track on the sidewalk to legitimize it, to see if people were going to use it, accept it. It finally was made permanent. So now across this sidewalk there's a cycle track. The desire lines. Desire lines it's the greatest expression in urban planning. It's so poetic. It was a French philosopher in the 50s who coined this phrase. There's other phrases for it, desire paths. The Dutch call it elephant paths and whatnot. But desire lines, this is the greatest expression. They listened to the desire lines of just a few citizens in the city, and they legitimized their behavior. Instead of setting up a fence saying, you're not going to ride on that sidewalk, we're going to allow you to do it, because you know what? Desire lines are democracy in action. They are the people. The people of our cities communicate with us 24 hours a day, every single second of the day. The citizens of cities are sending us messages. And it's up to a modern city to listen, receive the messages, act upon the desire lines, instead of expecting people to do what we want them or we think they want to do. I love desire lines. This is sort of, some people go bowling. I look at desire lines. This is my hotel in Halifax in Canada. Fresh snow on the commons, and it's an old, North American old city. And there's the green lines are the original pathways, perfect for 19th century promenading, and walking your dog, going for a run, that's fine. Snow fell. I woke up, rush hour, boom. The red lines were desire lines carved straight as arrows through the snow. People walking from the neighborhoods to the city center, also on bikes. The next day it snowed again, and I'm sitting there in the morning, I'm going, yes, same desire lines, identical. A modern city would react to that. Keep the recreational paths, fine. But this is where the people of that city now, today, are actually wanting to go. We take desire lines very seriously, and we take it to the next level. We filmed an intersection relating to cycling and behavior. We wanted to look to see how we could maybe redesign these car-centric intersections that we've just inherited from a last century and don't think so much about. We filmed an intersection in Copenhagen, and we filmed 16,631 cyclists in 12 hours. Nobody's ever done a behavioral study like this for cyclists anywhere in the world. You have to go to the next level when you're battling the Matrix. If you've seen that film, you know you got to do the Keanu Reeves, right? You have to tackle it. We did not have any data at this point. We just had film footage, 12 hours with lots of people and pedestrians and cars. And I got an anthropologist into the company. I said, look at that. Let's try and crunch some behavior here. So she sat there and used like 250 hours of direct human observation, studying the behavior of the cyclists, mapping every single desire line that every single one of those people did. And then we started to look at it differently. We sat and we watched it so often, and it was really, it's never got boring. We were discovering new stuff all the time. One of the things we noticed is, like this guy's riding through a pedestrian crossing. That's illegal. And we actually have changed the conversation in Copenhagen. Even there, people think, oh, those damn cyclists, right? Breaking the law, rogues of the urban landscape. And we actually found out that only 7% of the cyclists on this intersection, and we've done several other studies. We just did 9 intersections in Amsterdam for the city of Amsterdam. Only 7% broke or bent a Danish traffic law. We divided them into 2 categories. We called them the momentumists, because when you're on a bicycle, you want to maintain your momentum. If it was legal in another EU city, we kind of said that's okay, right? And the 1%, the reckless, we called them, these are the ones who blew through a red light, rode on sidewalks, which we don't think is cool because pedestrians need their space, but really 1% did something stupid. And I even asked like the most bicycle-friendly politicians in Copenhagen, I'm saying, guess how many people out of these 16,000? Oh, 25, 30%. Even like people who ride every day. And I'm going, dude, it's like 7, and really it's only 1. This has changed the conversation, which is really good. This guy, though, he's breaking the law. We noticed, and you know, you don't have to be an anthropologist to maybe assume that if you're in the public space and you're doing something illegal, you might, as an animal, as the animals that we are, you might want to make yourself smaller, you know, to make so that the flock around you doesn't notice your bad behavior. This is what we were kind of assuming, but we noticed that whenever somebody entered an illegal zone, they changed their human form. They actually made themselves bigger, like this guy. He actually, everybody was rising up. You know, you have your standard position that you ride your bike, whatever that may be. Whenever they entered an illegal zone, they rose up, and they kind of like looked around with a goofy look, like kind of like sorry, apologetically looking at nobody but everybody, and so, I'm sorry, I know, but it's 2 more meters, I'm good. And as soon as they hit the other side, poof, they assumed the position and just went off. So they were actually being incredibly considerate to the rest of society. They were apologizing for their behavior. And really, there was no little old ladies running, you know, jumping out for their lives. It was really like watching paint dry. Nothing dramatic happened. It was a whole bunch of people interacting very well and being very considerate to each other. 250 hours, we love data, and you know, we're all into that, but like 250 hours of human observation, there's no computer program in history that can, you know, give us so many results and observations. We also found a lot of data. We mined data out of it. What time of day were they bending the traffic law, and all of these different things. Absolutely fascinating. So even though we know how to build infrastructure and cycle tracks and everything, it's all been around for about 100 years, we still see shit like this showing up in cities. I've promised never to mention which city that is. It's on the continent. You know, this is an example of somebody, you know, an engineer who knows nothing about infrastructure, told top down to make space for bikes, and it's, you know, it's like squeezing bicycles into the matrix. The matrix, perfect, we don't need bikes, but here's a bit of space. You know, I'll put up weird bollards, you know, I'll take away space from pedestrians, but I'm going to ignore all that fantastic space off to the left, you know, because that's a street. Oh, man, we can't touch that, right? This is no regard for design, the human experience, logic, or safety, you know, and we see this all over the world. You have, like in America, also in this country, you have like bike lanes on the wrong side of parked cars. You know, we know for about 100 years, you put them along the curb, you don't put them in between the door zone and moving traffic. You know, and if you do that, it's the greatest way to protect the paint jobs in the parked cars. You just put some squishy cyclists in between there, right? Crazy things like sharrows, you know, we know better, and still stuff like that gets done. Lots of, Sam, this is where I'm going to tease you a bit, sorry, because we've done that on the Twitter as well. Lots of fantastic visions of the future. Ever since the automobile was invented, really, it sort of launched this whole vision of all these futuristic things that could happen. And, you know, the idea of elevated cycle tracks, you know, leading people. This is like an idea that's just like from the early 50s and whatnot. I think really if we ever met again in 2030, the streets of the cities that are doing it right, it's just going to be a bunch of people on bikes and walking and taking public transport and just wanting to go to a cool cafe. And it's going to be cities like what Paris is becoming, what Copenhagen and Amsterdam is. I really don't think the Blade Runner visions of our cities, if it hasn't happened yet in 100 years of really a lot of people dreaming it up, I don't think it's going to happen. We know what works. We have 7,000 years of experience. What we like to work with is also design, and really, the idea is, what if we just used basic design principles to plan our cities instead of only relying on engineering? What if we designed bicycle infrastructure, like we design smartphones, toasters, every product we have in our home? You know, when you are a designer, you work with the 4 types of pleasure, for example, you know, physio, psycho, socio, ideo. What if we designed infrastructure based on stuff like that? I think that would be amazing. And really, it's how a lot of infrastructure has been designed in the past. See, like when designers, they think about the human being on the other end of the product. Whoever designed my smartphone was thinking about me, my 7-year-old kid, my 86-year-old dad. They want us to have a nice feeling with that product. The company they're working for wants to make billions, but that design team, they just want me to feel good holding this thing. And it does feel nice, actually, to be honest. But you know, that's design. It's a human-to-human experience. Engineering is a human-to-computer model experience, and then the humans who actually have to use it aren't really considered very often. You know, chairs, the most iconic design object in history. We have chairs from the Neolithic period, people designing them. We can all react to designs like this and go, oh, it's a shopping trolley. Oh, but it's a chair. I see what he did there. Oh, it's an octopus. Oh, but it's a chair. Okay, well, you can like it or hate it. It doesn't matter. Like, none of you have these in your living room for your guests to sit on, right? It's just sort of interpretation. Yeah, basically. There's the London cycling map right there. If we're going to use this metaphor of chair design and bicycle infrastructure, there's the London cycling map. It works. This guy's showing us it works. Look, you can sit on it, but it's kind of like not really connected. There's lots of really sharp edges and whatnot. It doesn't really look very comfortable to use. And and the point really is that none of us have 6 of these around our dining table, for our guests to sit on. All people want is just a damn chair. When you all came in here today, you found a seat and you sat down. Right? You didn't have to interpret the designer's intentions of the chair. I see what he was trying to do. Yeah, Yeah. Yeah, okay. Where's the on-off button? You didn't have to worry about it disappearing from under you in the middle of my talk like a lot of bicycle infrastructure in London. You just sat your asses down. It was easy and it was intuitive. Imagine if riding a bicycle in a city or walking in a city was as easy and intuitive as that. That would be the goal, really, and it is possible because it happens in other places. Design is powerful when we use it correctly. The seductive power of objects can transcend other important issues like price or performance. Do we need that smartphone we just bought? No, but we have it. It's nice and it's shiny, and we want it. We've been seduced by it. This kid has been seduced by design. This is Felix. He's 12. He's my kid, and we played this car game on Xbox, and you have to choose all the cars to race. And my kids spend about 5 hours a year in a car just because we live in Copenhagen. We don't need a car, so we don't talk about cars. How often do you talk about like Icelandic literature? It's probably not very often. It's kind of like that for cars. It doesn't enter the conversation. So we're going through all the cars, and he's going, "Oh, Daddy, cool car." Scrolling, right? "Oh, cool car." And I said, "What is he reacting to?" And I noticed he was reacting. Every car that he was reacting to was pre-1975, back when car design was cool. This kid who has no relationship with cars is recognizing cool design. That's how powerful good design can be. The seductive power of objects can transcend issues like the weather. This is not the best day to be riding a bicycle in Copenhagen, and yet 80% ride all winter. They know that the design will work even in a suboptimal day like this. They know that the city will be along within 15 minutes and the cycle tracks will be cleared of that snow and their ride home will be smooth as silk. They've been seduced by that good infrastructure design to use it. Good design improves behavior everywhere in the world, like I said, even in Copenhagen, but probably more here. Those damn cyclists, bloody cyclists, like they're some kind of subspecies of human or something. They're just Homo sapiens, right? And, breaking the law and all the things that people say about cyclists, I say, no. Those cyclists have not been given decent infrastructure. Even worse, none at all. People react to design positively or negatively with their behavior. If they're breaking the law on their bicycles or jaywalking, my God, or whatever, it's simply because the design doesn't work and you have to fix that first. Give them best practice infrastructure and they will behave. They will reward you by improving their behavior. They don't want to break the law. None of us walk around a city all day looking for opportunities to break the law. Oh, there's a window. Fuck. Cool. No, I just want to go home. None of us want to break the law. Right? The 99.9% just want to live a normal life. Right? So if they're breaking the law, it's because it's the city's fault. Basically, that wasn't even a joke. But thank you for laughing. Everything we need to design a bicycle-friendly city, or really all aspects of a livable city, were invented at least 100 years ago. 7,000 years of experience. Sure, we don't die of the Black Death, the plague anymore in our cities, thank God for that. There's a lot, we have better sewage than we had in, London in 1142. But, basically, we have a lot of experience, urban anthropology from 7,000 years, Now we're trying to overcomplicate things with technology because we have it. Let's invent this. Do we need it? No, shut up. We're going to invent this. We're going to make this, We should really just look at what people want. Homo sapiens have been around for a while. We kind of have figured out what they want. And that is why anthropology and sociology is a really important element in urban design. In Copenhagen, for example, in Denmark, we have 100 years of experience. In London, the first cycle track, like Copenhagen style, was put in 1933. This is no new funky thing I'm telling you about here. It's, Manchester, 20% modal share for bikes in 1949. This used to be a great cycling nation. The design, Danish design's a thing. And we know that after 100 years of experience, if you just keep doing stuff and making mistakes, you end up with best practice. There are only 4 types of bicycle infrastructure in Denmark. You take your bike on a train, you go to some other city that you don't know and you can't pronounce, and you get off the train, there's a cycle track. You know it's going to take you. It looked the same as the last city. Everything is very uniform. It's wayfinding, it's safety, it's ease of use. And this is how it's ended up after 100 years. You know, the Dutch also have their kind of a system, but in Denmark it's just like, poof, really beautiful Danish design, and it works. Oh, I could talk for hours about micro design, never mind macro design. You know, you have like little desire lines legitimized by the city by a little ramp. You have manhole covers that are ramped up to the curb to provide a ramp to the bike racks. Little human decisions made by somebody along the way to make life a little bit easier for people in a city. A little ramp in a backyard. You don't need a ramp to get up that curb in that backyard, but somebody went out there and went, zzz, zzz. Nobody knows who it was. I've asked. I tried to find the person who did that. It just appeared. You know, it's anonymous user-generated design. You know, we play around in Copenhagen. We put like handles on light posts to see if people would use them. While, you know, because we don't want to get off our bikes at the red lights. That's the thing. You got to understand how people think on bicycles. Momentumism is very important. So they're holding on to it. You know, and then they're also using it to propel themselves into motion, right? We didn't count on that. It was a brilliant little added bonus. Garbage cans for cyclists to see if they would figure out what they were, and they did. And they just throw away the same stuff as pedestrians, you know, banana peels, newspapers, coffee cups, cigarette packs. It's all the same in Copenhagen. The city now has railings and footrests for cyclists at 18 locations, so people can just hold on or put their foot there so they don't have to get off the bike. And the text here, it says, "Hi cyclists, thank you for cycling in the city. Rest your foot here. Thank you for cycling in the city," because it's pretty good what they do. This is the approach, making a little fragment of the day a little bit better for like a small portion of the population. It's important for us at this conference to listen to people talking and learn things, but really, really have to listen to the greatest minds if we really want to take this seriously, this development for better cities. The greatest minds like Lulu Sophia. This is my daughter. She's, 7? She's 7 now. But I call her the world's youngest urbanist. I've written articles about her on our blog. And it started about when she was 3.5. We're on our cargo bike in Copenhagen, going to the hardware store, I think. And as we do, and we stopped at a red light. She's 3.5, okay? Like her world is very narrow, all right? And when you're 3.5. And she looked over at the light, and we were stopped, and she was, "Oh, Daddy, look." And she was, it's like Mickey Mouse was standing there. That's how amazing. She says, "There's 2 people on a motorbike." She had just never considered the fact that 2 humans could sit on a motorbike. And she was 3.5. She's like, oh. I was surprised how shocked she was. And I'm going, well, that's cool. You know, we're 2 people on a bike too. We're talking, we're friends, we're going somewhere. That's what they're doing. Yeah, but you know, it's just amazing. We continued on. We went to another red light, and I realized in retrospect she'd been studying her urban theater, looking for other examples of 2 people doing this, 2 people doing that. We get to this red light, and she said, "Daddy, cars are silly." I said, "Okay, well, why are cars silly?" And she says, "I can't see the people in them. They're silly because I can't see the people." This 3.5-year-old nailed it, the anonymity of car culture, the social exclusion of automobiles, 2 people walking, 2 people bike, there's lots of people on that bus, and I can't see how many people are in that car. And that frustrated this one Homo sapien, that she couldn't see the other Homo sapiens in that form of transport. The other thing she offers up, I write them down constantly, the stuff that just comes out of her mouth. We don't talk about it. I just let her speak. And I'm going to make money on that one. You know, that's really nice. Eat your cornflakes. No, one of them, we're walking around our city and in our neighborhood, and we're just waiting at the red light, holding hands like this. And she was just looking around, and she looks up at me and she says, "Daddy, when is my city going to fit me?" It was the most beautiful line. You know, you're like a little kid. You spend your life like staring at grown-up asses all day. You know, garbage cans are like basketball hoops. You know, talk about a big city. So she felt like her city didn't fit her. And she wanted to know when it would happen. I said, "You're going to grow. Look at your brother." And she was like, yeah. Like she kind of knew that, but she just frustrated, right? And that's really made me think. And I thought, you know, wait, do I feel like my city fits me? And I started thinking, yeah, there's lots of streets in Copenhagen, you know, walking, cycling, yeah. Oh, but there's also streets where I don't. I come to other cities, you know, and even more so, I don't feel like these cities fit me. The goal really for us, this is what we call it at our company, is the life-size city. You know, everybody should feel at scale with the urban environment. You can also stand on, it doesn't all have to be low houses, you know, and little, balloons everywhere, on one happy day. It can also be Times Square now, which is completely free of cars, and they just put in benches, or total chaos in New York, the capital of the civilized world, and now people are just in there eating ice creams. This is nice, yeah. They've transformed Times Square, so you can feel at scale. You can feel like New York fits you there. Not everywhere in New York, but that's a good example. It doesn't have to be quaint little villages. The life-size city is a goal. So what can kids do? I thought, this Lulu, she's rocking it. So I went into Felix's classroom when he was in the 3rd grade and arranged with the teacher for a little urban planning kind of job. And I went in, I said, hey, there's this thing called like urban planning, urban design, never mind. I don't want to confuse you with all that. What I want you to do is to redesign the roundabout outside your school. It's a really badly engineered roundabout, and they use it like 5-6 times a day in our densely populated neighborhood. And it's chaos in the morning when people are going to work and everything. And I said, redesign it, make it safer for cyclists. It's not dangerous, it's Copenhagen, but still make it safer for cyclists, better for pedestrians. And hey, while you're at it, try and think about how we can get people out of cars, right, and change their mode of transport. See you later, see you next week. And the teacher took over. Oh, and they embraced this, these kids. They divided up into teams. They went on site visits, and they didn't take notes. They're only in the 3rd grade, so they did drawings back in the classroom discussing, and the teacher was absolutely astounded by their enthusiasm, as was I. They made a huge model out of milk cartons of their redesign of the intersection. So we went back in and said, right, what have you figured out, kids? And it's stuff like this. One kid said, he says, why don't we just make cars ugly? Nobody will want to drive them. Like, seriously, who would drive an ugly car? And I said, that's brilliant. That's rational. It's logic. Some of the ideas they had were, why isn't the speed limit 15 kilometers per hour? Nobody told them anything about anything. This is stuff they figured out themselves. They had no way of knowing that the average speed for cycling in Copenhagen is 16, and they just said, I don't know. Well, how do you know that? I don't know. It just feels slow. I don't know. It's cool. And it was brilliant. They had fences, ideas of fences to separate the cycle tracks, not necessary, but they're thinking like this. Light signals at the roundabout, one-way streets for cars was an idea they came up with. Everything for making cars difficult was what they, as the users of this roundabout, that's the important thing. They're cycling there every day, walking there every day. This is what they thought was an improvement for this street. They had one idea of glass roofs to cover all the cycle tracks in the entire city and all the streets so they would never ever get wet in the snow or the rain again. On their model up there, they had there's like a cupcake cover plastic thing saying, tunnel, glass roofs, please. Again, brilliant. We understand that logic, especially on a day like today in London. But really, these kids inspire me so much. We all have this rationality and logic. We just kind of screw it up with thinking too much and overcomplicating. The glass roofs, funny idea, but it exists. In Copenhagen, we have the green waves on all the arteries leading to the city center. If you ride your bike 20 kilometers per hour, you'll hit green all the way into the city center. It reverses in the afternoon to get you home again. It's kind of like a tailwind, a technological tailwind. In the Netherlands, they're testing on a lot of their, in 3 cities, they're testing rain sensors on the crossings where bikes cross a busy road. And if it's raining, snowy, or the temperature's too cold, the cyclists will have 3 to 4 times more priority crossing the road than the cars do. They're just sitting there listening to the radio in the heat. And it just gets people home quicker, prioritizing them. It's the same rationality that these children are telling us we should use. The last person of the greatest minds is, he's probably one of the greatest pedestrian and cycling advocates in the world, but he died in 1347, so he's not going to know that. William of Ockham. Occam's razor is a principle attributed to him, used in mathematics and stuff like that, but it really is, this is what it is. Simpler explanations are generally better than more complex ones. If you choose the simplest solution on the table in front of you, you probably chose the best one. We use this every single day. We're doing projects or whatnot, and we say, Occam? Okay, yeah, wait, hang on then. Yeah, okay. We just cut through the bullshit and just find the best rational solution for the Homo sapiens that we're working for. This is really, for us, important. But this begs the question, what would the streets of our cities look like if our main consultants were 5-year-olds, 3rd graders, teams of young design students, and a 13th century religious dude? Basically, seriously, I think they would be beautiful. I think they would work better than they're working now. If you look at how many people are still killed and injured by cars around the world, 35,000 people, a 9/11 every single month in the European Union alone. they would be safer than at any single point in the last 100 years. So if you're worried about that kind of stuff, then we know what to do. Monuments, at the very end here. A lot of us work in different projects and different aspects, and sometimes we'll be working on a very specific cycle track on one street in one North American city, completely overcomplicated process, but that's their process, so we have to suck it up and say, oh, really, that's interesting. All it is one simple cycle track, and we work on different bits and pieces in architecture. I'm going to do the door frames of this building, whatnot, but really, when we talk about livable streets and livable cities, it's really important to consider that everything we do is monument building. The greatest monument in Denmark is this little naked green woman on a rock in the harbor, right? The Little Mermaid. Completely inappropriate, wonderful fairy tale, completely inappropriate monument, I think, for a city that's really as cool as Copenhagen. I think the greatest monument that has ever been erected is the bicycle infrastructure network in Copenhagen and Danish cities. Same thing applies in Dutch cities. It's an open source monument. Anybody can build them. They're rising all over the world, in cities around the world. The mayor of Paris is building his monument, and the people of Paris are helping him. We're all the architects and the designers of these modern urban monuments, changing cities, going back to the future, using what we know to make our cities better. This quote is my favorite about cities. Cities are erected on spiritual columns. Like giant mirrors, they reflect the hearts of their residents. If those hearts darken and lose faith, cities will lose their glamour. A 900-year-old quote about cities, more true today than ever before. That is the job, building monuments and making the hearts of our citizens shine. Thank you.